Hi, everyone. I am Kelly Crane, and this is Daily Readings with Kelly. Today, we are going to read from the book You Don't Owe Anyone by Caroline Garnet McGraw. There we go. Free yourself from the weight of expectations. Good stuff. All right, this is coming from page 13. Children's narratives are, by nature, incomplete and overly simplified interpretations of reality. So are adults, for that matter. When confusing things happen to us as children, we create stories to make sense of the inexplicable. But our brains aren't fully developed yet, and neither are our narratives. One of the most popular childhood stories is, "If anything bad happens, then it is all my fault." And of course, the close cousin of that story is, "If I can just get it right, then it will all be okay." Ergo, perfectionism. If you're struggling with perfectionism, it doesn't mean that you're hopeless or bad. It means that you're human, and at some point you were hurt. When that happened, the good child role became your refuge, your necessity. Given what you knew and believed at the time, it was the best thing that you could do. It's tempting to skim over the hurts of the past. It's easy to sugarcoat or dismiss them with that classic line, "Oh, it doesn't matter anymore. It was a long time ago." But when we don't acknowledge or heal those hurts, they keep driving our actions and causing us pain in the present. And we miss the chance to look closely at the meaning we made from them. Time alone doesn't heal all wounds. Only love can do that. And when we apply love and acceptance to the parts of ourselves that hurt, we heal. Okay, where to start with this one? I really like when she talks about, like, she uses that word narratives. Okay. So there's a whole line of therapy, a whole theory of therapy called narrative therapy. And this is all based on the stories we tell ourselves and the meanings we give things when they happen. So the meanings we give to events when they happen. And she says here, one of the stories we can tell ourselves is, "If anything bad happens, it's my fault." And another one, she says, "If I can just get it right, then it will all be okay." And this one more thing, this idea of the good child role. Okay, so we put all of that together, the word narratives, those two stories she mentions, "If anything bad happens, it's my fault. And if I can just get it right, then it'll be okay." And then that phrase, that term, good child, okay, the good child role. So let's put this all together. So if I'm growing up in a household, well, you know what? It's really any household, because no parent is perfect, and we're all giving our children messages every single day, okay? Whether we like it or not, whether they're intended or not, whether these messages are, direct or indirect, our kids are hearing messages all the time. And so did we when we were growing up, okay? So let's talk about the narrative. I create a story in my mind to explain things. And when I'm 5, well, what's the extent of my vocabulary, my worldview, my way of looking at things? When we're 5, we think our parents are gods. We do. We can't imagine them doing anything wrong or being wrong. And by the way, we have to do that so that we can depend on them and trust them and for our own survival. Okay. So that needs to happen. That's not anything we're doing wrong. As kids, we're looking to our parents for survival. So if they do something wrong, it's going to like break our trust in being able to like even survive. So we can't imagine that. We can't imagine them doing anything wrong. So when I'm 5, if they've messed up, and now as an adult, we could say, okay, they messed up. But at 5, if we're so locked into like our parents cannot mess up at all, it is impossible for them to mess up. And if something feels off and feels wrong, or if I'm getting yelled at, or something's happening, the story is naturally going to default to, if anything bad happens, then it is all my fault. That's the story. That's the narrative we come up with. And by the way, this is like so common. And it's one of the core beliefs that many people believe. Okay, if something bad happens, it's my fault. So that's one of the narratives. The other one here, if I can just get it right, then it will all be okay. Again, if my parents are gods and infallible and they can't make a mistake and everything that bad happens is my fault, that means that I got to try harder. I got to get it right. I got to be damn near perfect if I want things to go right. If everything is going to go okay, it's up to me. Because if I'm the one getting it wrong, if I'm the one, messing this up and it's all my fault, then I better, get to it and get it right. So that's what does it say? Ergo perfectionism. Yeah, perfectionism is born. Voila. Okay, if you're struggling with perfectionism, it doesn't mean that you're hopeless or bad. And it doesn't, right? I mean, we can see how this develops. And by the way, if this is developing by the time we're 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, this is something that is so deeply ingrained in us that by the time we're adults, like we've been doing things this way with this narrative, with this belief for decades. Like, how do we just say to ourselves, oh, I'm such a perfectionist, I got to turn that off. I got to stop doing that. I mean, that's going to be pretty impossible, right? 20, 30 years of doing this stuff. So the fact that you keep kind of falling into the trap of perfectionism, like it is so deeply rooted in us that I wouldn't expect anything less than that. Okay. It's so normal. It's so normal. Yeah, it means that you're human. And at some point you were hurt. Okay, that's everybody, by the way. So we all have this story to some degree. And then this idea of the good child role. Okay, like if I get it right, if I'm the good child, then I'm going to stop getting hurt. If I could just be, a good enough athlete, then my dad will pay attention to me. If I could just get straight A's, then my mom will stop yelling at me to get better grades. If I could just, whatever, fill in the blank. If I could just do this perfect, then they'll love me. Then I'll be worthy. Then it'll be okay. Then they'll stop yelling at me. Then they'll love me more because I need love and they're not giving it to me unless I do this thing, right? So all these stories we tell ourselves, they develop in childhood, and it's really about the events we grew up in and how our child minds explain those events. And unless we wake up when we're an adult to the fact that, like, hey, maybe some of these ideas and stories aren't true. Maybe this is something that I've just been like telling myself since I was 4. My 4-year-old mind imagined this thing, and maybe my 60, 70-year-old mind can finally say, like, hey, I'm a lot smarter now at 70 than I was at 4. Can we just challenge the story a little bit and see, is that still right? Does it still make sense to think that way? And many times, if we're really honest, we can say, like, no, right? Our 4-year-old, 5-year-old mind did the best it could for explaining the story, explaining the situation. But I know now that that's not right, right? So we start kind of dismantling these stories Because some of these stories, people, can last our entire lives, and they can manifest in all kinds of ways and make us act in all kinds of ways and hurt us in all kinds of ways. When we were young, we needed them for survival. We needed this stuff to stay close to our parents, to be able to trust that they can take care of us, right? Like we needed that. But now we're adults, we can take care of ourselves. Like we don't need that story anymore. So we learn in what ways the stories were formed. And we just start questioning, hey, do I still need to believe that? Does that still feel true to me? Right? And we just start questioning. So awesome. Thanks again for joining. Again, the book, You Don't Owe Anyone, Free Yourself from the Weight of Expectations. Good book, especially if you're struggling with some codependency, if you're in a like an empath narcissist relationship. Great book for that. Okay, thanks for joining. See you next time.